Hey guys, Matthew here, and today I want to bring you guys a video on the result for the 40% Delirious map. So we are continuing the test. Today I'll be running 60% Delirious for 6 hours as well. So I want to give you guys the methodology of what I did in terms of testing, then the results, and then I'll give you guys an interpretation of these results. So let's get in first off the methodology. In terms of fragments, in terms of scarabs, what we were using to juice up our maps is one either rusted or polished Harbinger Scarab. That really pays off for itself very well and adds a decent bit of monsters to the map. We dropped the Elder Scarabs as they were just way too expensive for what they were actually doing for us. And finally, I swapped in to a rusted Breach Scarab, which adds a decent amount of monsters to your map, which helps get those tiles up in terms of rewards. And you really need to only get 2 Simulacrum Splinters and the entirety of your breach to pay for your whole scarab, so quite good there. Pretty much 1C each on those. That's pretty much everything I use for scarabs. In terms of there's more, the idea was to take the cheapest ones, as I wasn't really happy with the results from the fine orbs. Now unfortunately though, I guess the price of all of the Therm orbs went way up, because I was expecting to be able to buy some in bulk for like 5C each, but actually it was pretty much minimum almost 10C each to reliably be able to get some. So we ended up paying pretty much the same price than we did when we did the 20% on the fine orb. What I didn't end up using most of the time is probably the Harbinger one, which actually seemed to be pretty decent in terms of rewards. It had, some Exile drops, or some Exile shard drops, some Ancient shards. It did add up to be pretty decent, and it paid for itself relatively quick compared to like some of the garbage orbs, which were barely a couple chaos less. For example, talismans being like 6 or 7 chaos, might as well pay a little bit more but actually gain something out of it. So that's pretty much that. Now the difference between the 0% and the 0, 20 and now the 40% is that 40% Delirious, we actually had to force on the Poison Sextant to be able to clear these maps efficiently. So this is actually going to add a pretty significant cost to the price of our mapping. Now the Poison Sextant shows up every 10 to 15 sextants, I would say. Now this is just me ballparking it, but that seemed to be how rare it was. So every 3 maps you are spending 10 to 15 sextants, so 3 to 5 per map, which is like 3 to 5 chaos additional costs per map that you need to be able to refund to make up for that sextant. But of course it does add a ridiculous amount of damage to the build. It makes you be able to clear upwards of 60% Delirious maps without a headhunter or anything remotely expensive on like a 10x cock build. Very, very good mechanic to take advantage of, the Poison Sextant one. Now let's get into the results. So over the course of 6 hours we made 1875 base chaos. Now this is only considering actual drops. Now it doesn't consider bases or anything like that, but I sold all the bases that I got and I really didn't get very many. Only 285 plus Crusader chests, which were 25C each, so about a little over half an X in bases over the course of 6 hours. Not crazy at all, but it is what it is. And I do make sure, by the way, in these results to remove all the garbage fluff, like for example these crappy oils considered 1C each, or for example if there's a div guard considered 1C each. I remove all the really bad stuff, and I make sure that this is actually accurate results with only things that I know for a fact I can sell within like minutes if I post it at the actual market value. So now one thing that we have to know here is that I actually dropped a level 3 Enlighten from the elite mechanic, which was worth 1 exile, but I corrupted it so it lost all of its value. But if we were to not corrupt it for the actual sake of this test, that would be an extra exile there. Now also this application or whatever here, excellence, does not include maps. So we did get about 250 chaos worth of maps, which we also need to add to the actual revenue here. But this is also considering T15 maps worth 5C, T16 maps worth 6C, and every single thing T14 and below worth nothing. So realistically, if you were to sell some of those lower tier red maps, even if it's 2 to 3C each, it will add up. And this is something that I didn't do. I completely just ignored them entirely. Now, of course, this is not pure profit. We do have some initial investment. Sorry about that. the initial investment was, I took a screenshot of this, 372 chaos. Now this is the amount of currency that I put inside my tab to get going with the test. This is was mostly basically used for buying Delirium orbs initially, obviously, and then mapping currencies, so alchemies, scours, etc., etc. So we have to remove 372C, and now we are going to end up with our actual revenue, which is 1,833 in 6 hours. So if we divide that by the price of exalts currently, which is 80 chaos, that means that we made about 22.9 exalts total, divided by 6 hours of fairly efficient mapping, for a total of 3.8 exalts per hour. Now, in terms of lucky drops, we got 3 pure exalts. So if we were to remove those from the actual count here, 3 exalts in 6 hours, we'd have to remove 0.5 exalt an hour. So our actual amount of currency made over the course of 6 hours with no lucky drops whatsoever would be 3.3 exalt per hour. The vast majority of that being related to simulacrums, pretty much, right? That's where most of the money came from, and then the rest is just a mix and match of everything else, right? So a little over 3x an hour. Still, I have to say I'm not super impressed by this, considering Delirious maps are some of the highest content in the game. So now that you guys know the results, which by the way are in no way, shape, or form bad, they're just not so impressive. Let me give you guys a quick rundown on why I think that is. And I've already mentioned this basically, but I think the price of Delirium orbs being like 10C each for any of them, if you want to buy them reliably, does obviously increase to the price per map a lot, and it makes it much harder to pay your actual Delirium orbs back, especially because simulacrums are not as expensive as they could be either. Now the next thing is that forcing that poison sextant every 3 map is also eating a little bit of profit there. So I'm actually thinking that today in the 60% Delirious test is where we are going to have the biggest breakthrough. Because yes, even if the Delirium orbs are pretty expensive and simulacrums are not that expensive, at least now, while we have to force on the poison sextant for 60%, we are going to get significantly more simulacrum splinters on a map-to-map basis. So as the more you get out of your map, the more worth it is to force on that poison sextant. Initially, it didn't feel worth it at all, which is why I didn't do it for my 20% Delirious maps. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the results. So before I go, as always, I want to say a huge thank you to my supporters: Cluzy, Luro, Gaikona, JW Players, Scott, Justin, Alex, Ollie, Matt, Kevin, Bit, Axel, and Hayden. If your name isn't on there, this list is going to be updated very soon. I've been very, very busy lately, but thank you guys so much for your support and for making this possible. Also, a huge thank you for 25K subs. That's absolutely crazy, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.